Memories. My boss belittled women, and it cost him dearly. Some nights, I'd wake up with my hands balled into fists, nails biting into my skin. Not because of nightmares, but because I'd been dreaming of finally giving that man a piece of my mind. My name's Rose Elizabeth Carter, and I'm 78 now. I'm rocking on my weathered porch swing in Meadowview, Nebraska, watching the prairie grasses sway under the evening sky. Something I've done nearly every night for the last 20 years. The cornfields glow gold in the fading light, a sight that's carried me through my darkest and brightest days. If you're hearing my story, I'd love to know where you're at. Drop a line about your corner of the world, near or far. It feels like we're just friends catching up over coffee. And if my words strike a chord, a little nod of encouragement would mean the world to this old soul. So, where do I start? I was 27 when I landed a big promotion at Sunfield Textiles in 1974. I'd been at that massive factory on the edge of Lincoln since I was 19. Just another young woman behind a sewing machine. Back then, women like me in Nebraska didn't have many paths. We were farmers' daughters, destined to be wives. Or maybe teachers or typists if we got a lucky break. But I wasn't wired like that. When my fiancé, Tommy, was killed in Vietnam in '67, something in me shifted. I wasn't going to sit around waiting for a husband, or stay tucked under my parents' roof forever. I wanted more than these endless plains seemed to promise a woman. I can still picture my dad's face when I said I was heading to the city. He gave me the silent treatment for weeks. No respectable woman leaves her family for factory work, he snapped, his words sharper than a winter wind. Mom wept quietly as she packed my small suitcase that morning. In my coat pocket, I found a ham sandwich wrapped in wax paper and $7. All she could slip me without Dad knowing. Lincoln might as well have been Chicago to me back then. Those early months were rough. I shared a tiny room with two other factory girls at Mrs. Harper's boarding house, where the rules were stricter than a nun's habit. Doors locked at 8:30 p.m. sharp. No men allowed, ever. And Sunday church was non-negotiable. The smell of machine oil and fabric dust clung to me, no matter how hard I scrubbed in the shared bathroom. My hands, once soft from chores like peeling potatoes, turned calloused, dotted with needle pricks. I still carry those faint scars on my fingertips. Unlike some girls who saw the factory as a pit stop to marriage, I poured my heart into my work. I'd linger after shifts, watching floor managers inspect the goods. I asked about fabrics, orders, delivery schedules, anything to soak up knowledge. Mr. Thompson, the grizzled old floor manager, took notice. "Carter," he'd say, like he did with the guys, "you spot flaws better than most of the men running these lines." From him, that was gold. He's the one who nudged me to apply for assistant supervisor when Mr. Larson retired in '72. Goodness, the chuckles in the break room when word got out I'd put my name in. Betty Jones, my sewing partner for years, cornered me at lunch. "Rose, you out of your mind? No woman's gonna get those men to follow her here. You're setting yourself up for a fall." She might have had a point, but I wasn't backing down. For 2 years, I worked under Mr. Callahan as his assistant. A fair man who, despite his early doubts, came to rely on me. When he transferred to the Omaha plant in '74, I was stunned, everyone was, to be named supervisor of the entire sewing department. "This isn't my choice," Mr. Prescott, the factory director, told me in his office. "Chicago's pushing this equal opportunity talk to polish their image. The government's cracking down with that new Equal Employment Opportunity Act. But hear me, Miss Carter. One mistake. One missed target. And we're done with this. I walked out terrified but thrilled. I'd be the first woman supervisor in Sunfield's 30-year history. My paycheck would nearly double. I could send money to Mom and Dad, who were scraping by after years of drought on the farm. I could even rent my own little place. That night, in my narrow boarding house bed, I wrote Mom a letter. I didn't mention Prescott's threat or my trembling hands. I just said I'd made something of myself, that her quiet sacrifice wasn't wasted. What I didn't see coming was the real storm brewing. The next day, I met my new boss, Vernon Slade, production manager fresh from a Cleveland plant. The moment his icy gray eyes sized me up, I felt a shiver that had nothing to do with the factory's weak heaters. "So you're the girl they're pretending is management," he said, ignoring my outstretched hand. "Let's see how long this stunt lasts." I should have smelled trouble, but I was too proud to heed the warning. I stood tall, met his stare, and said, "I figure it'll last as long as my work proves it should, Mr. Slade." His smirk didn't reach his eyes. "We'll see about that, Miss Carter. We'll see." That was just the start. For the next 4 years, that man did everything to crush not just my job, but my spirit. He came close, too, until I fought back in a way he never expected. The morning after my promotion, I showed up at the factory 30 minutes early. Nerves jangling but head high. I wanted to study the production schedules before the chaos of the day, to know exactly what my department needed. The factory floor was still at that hour. Just the low hum of heaters and the familiar scent of oil and cloth. I was at my new desk, poring over a clipboard, when I heard his footsteps. The way Vernon Slade walked screamed he thought the world owed him every step. "Didn't expect you to stick around past midnight," he said, lounging against the door of my small glass-walled office. "Most women would have come to their senses by now." "I'm not most women, Mr. Slade," I said, eyes on my papers. "These production goals seem reasonable, but I'd like to talk about the threading machines on line 2. They're jamming too often. I don't need your input on equipment, Carter," he said, stepping in, looming over my desk. "Your job is keeping those girls stitching on schedule. Leave the machines to me." That was the first of countless jabs. Over the next few weeks, it was clear Slade was gunning for my failure. It started subtle. Schedules shifted without a word to me. Memos meant for my department never arrived. At management meetings, my chair would mysteriously vanish, leaving me to stand awkwardly or fetch one while everyone stared. "Sorry, Carter," Slade would say, dripping fake sympathy. Must have been the cleaning crew's mix-up. The men would snicker, none daring to meet my eyes. They weren't cruel, most of them. Just too spineless to risk being linked to the factory's experiment. By the end of month 1, the attacks got bolder. One Monday, I learned my whole department was told their shift started an hour later. But no one bothered to inform me. Mr. Prescott summoned me that afternoon. "Miss Carter, your scheduling error cost us $500 in production today," he said, pushing a written warning across his desk. "Sir, I wasn't told of any change," I said. "Mr. Slade says he discussed it with you Friday." "Are you calling him a liar?" I stared at the paper, my hand unsteady as I grabbed the pen. "No, sir. It won't happen again." That night, in my new little apartment, I'd left the boarding house with my raise. I sobbed into my pillow. But I vowed those would be my last tears for Vernon Slade. I was a Nebraska farmer's daughter. We don't crack easily. The games continued, petty slights to drive me out. My reports disappeared. Maintenance requests for my department got misplaced. During quality checks, Slade would scrutinize my team's work, pointing out flaws invisible to anyone else. "This stitching's a disaster," he'd announce, loud enough for other departments to hear. "Is this your idea of quality, Miss Carter? Maybe you're better suited to baking pies." My team tried to lift me up in their quiet ways. Clara, a 20-year veteran of sewing cuffs, would leave an apple or a cookie on my desk on rough days. Ellie, a quick-handed 20-year-old, would stay late without being asked when we fell behind. "Don't let that snake run you off, Miss Rose," she whispered one late night. My grandma said the devil picks fights with the ones he's scared of most. 6 months in, I was exhausted but still standing. What Slade didn't count on was that I was good, really good. Despite his schemes, my department's numbers climbed. The women responded to my leadership. Tough but fair. Rooted in knowing their work because I'd lived it. But Slade was relentless. In July, '74, during the heatwave that left the factory sweltering, he made his boldest play yet. We were racing to finish a huge 4th of July order for a Denver store chain. Working round the clock. I just checked the final shipment when Slade strode in with Mr. Prescott and 2 men in sharp suits, reps from the Denver chain. "Here's our sewing department," Slade said. All charm and smiles. "Unfortunately, we've had some quality issues with your order." My stomach dropped. Quality issues? I'd inspected every single box. I stepped forward. "Mr. Slade, I personally checked that shipment." He gave me a patronizing look. "That's the issue, isn't it?" From his clipboard, he pulled 3 shirts with glaring defects. Uneven collars. Misaligned buttons. Sloppy seams. Defects my department couldn't have produced. Not after our thorough checks. "Miss Carter," Mr. Prescott said, his tone colder than a January night. "Explain how these passed your inspection." The factory floor went silent. 50 pairs of eyes were on me. Slade's allies smirking. My team anxious. Something broke loose inside me. Not my nerve, but my restraint. I picked up a shirt, studying it carefully. "These aren't from my department," I said. Slade scoffed. "You saying I faked this?" "I'm saying it's the truth," I replied. "These shirts have red thread markers in the seams. 3 weeks ago, we switched to green markers. Per your directive. These are either from another department or old stock. They're not ours." The silence was thick. I held Slade's stare. Mr. Prescott cleared his throat. "Vernon, is this true about the markers?" I'll never forget the venom in Slade's eyes. He'd been caught. "I might have pulled samples from the reject pile," he muttered, "to demonstrate our quality checks." One of the Denver reps, an older man with warm eyes, turned to me. "Miss, we've dealt with Sunfield for 15 years. This is the first time our order's been early with 0 defects. Keep doing what you're doing." I nodded. Steady on the outside, but soaring inside. It was a small victory, but it mattered. Someone had seen through Slade's tricks. Still, I knew he wouldn't quit. If anything, he'd double down. The next morning, a dead mouse was in my desk drawer. Then the women's restroom near my department was under repair, forcing my team to trek across the factory. The following week, our section's air conditioning failed during the hottest days of summer. I pushed back. I brought fans from home for my team. I rejiggered break schedules to keep production steady. I stayed late, double-checking my paperwork and stashing copies in my car. Every hurdle Slade threw my way made me dig in deeper. Every snide remark. Every sabotaged task. Every public jab fueled my fire. But even the fiercest flame can be smothered by enough mud. And Vernon Slade had buckets of it. By fall, the constant battle was grinding me down. I'd lost weight. Started getting migraines. Jumped at sudden sounds. My parents saw it when I visited the farm. "You're burning yourself out, Rose," Mom said, pressing a cool cloth to my head during a bad headache. "No job's worth your health." "I can't give up, Mom," I said. "It's not about giving up," Dad said, surprising me. He'd slowly warmed to my career over time. "It's about fighting clever. Not just fighting tough." His words echoed in my head on the drive back to Lincoln. Fighting clever, what did that look like? I couldn't out-trank Slade. Change his views. Or dodge him. The answer came to me that night. Staring at the ceiling. If I couldn't stop Slade, I had to shield myself. And the best shield against a powerful man was evidence. The next morning, I bought a small notebook with my lunch money. Just a cheap spiral pad. Small enough to slip in my purse. But it became my strongest weapon. And the spark of something bigger than I could have dreamed. "Evidence," I whispered, scribbling the date on the first page. "Let's see how sharp you really are, Mr. Slade." That notebook was my shadow. I kept it hidden in my purse by day. And filled it every night. Logging every slight. Every scheme. Every misunderstanding Slade orchestrated. I jotted down dates. Times. Witnesses. Exact words. I saved memos with contradictory orders. Tucking them between pages like treasures. October 3, 1974. Slade told shipping our Macy's rush order was delayed 2 days. When I asked, he claimed I requested it. Witnesses: Tom from shipping, Mary from billing. October 7, 1974. My department's quotas jumped 15% with no extra hands. Other departments unchanged. Prescott says Slade claimed I bragged we could handle more. No such conversation happened. October 12, 1974. Third time this month my department's maintenance requests, lost. Machines Singer 5 and Juki 12 still down. Ellen Brown lost half a day's work. I kept at it. Month after month. Building my defense. I didn't know what I'd do with it yet. But each entry felt like armor against Slade's attacks. By spring, 75, my notebook was half full. And I was still holding my ground. My department's numbers were the best in the factory. Despite Slade's interference. The women trusted me. And I trusted them. But Slade wasn't finished. One day, he called a surprise meeting with corporate visitors from Chicago. He presented a report claiming my department's output had dropped 10%. A flat-out lie. I knew the real figures. I stood, heart racing, and said, "Sir, those numbers are wrong. My department's output is up 5% from last quarter. I've got the records." Slade grinned. "Records can be wrong, Miss Carter." "Maybe," I said, pulling my notebook from my purse. "But I've got dates, memos, and witnesses for every order we've completed. Want to go over them now?" The room fell silent. The corporate folks exchanged glances. A woman in a crisp suit spoke up. "Let's see those records, Miss Carter." I flipped open my notebook. Reading off dates and numbers. Showing memos that backed me up. Slade's face turned crimson. But he stayed quiet. The woman nodded. "Looks like your department's doing well, Miss Carter. Mr. Slade, we'll need to review your report. That moment changed everything. Word spread through the factory. The women in my department started smiling at me again. Not out of pity, but respect. Even some of the men gave me nods in the hallways. Slade didn't stop. But his moves got careless. He was losing his edge. Over the next year, I kept my notebook close, adding to it whenever Slade tried something new. But I also started spreading what I'd learned. I told the younger women in the factory to keep their own logs, to write down anything that felt off. Evidence is your strength, I'd say. By 1976, the tide was turning. The Equal Employment Opportunity Act was shaking things up, and corporate was paying closer attention. Slade was quietly transferred to a smaller plant in Iowa that summer. No explanation given. I didn't celebrate, but I felt a weight lift. My department kept shining. In '77, I got another promotion, this time overseeing 2 departments. Mr. Prescott called me in. No threats this time. You've earned this, Rose, he said. Not because of Chicago, but because of you. I stayed at Sunfield Textiles for 20 more years, retiring in '97. I mentored dozens of women to step into bigger roles, teaching them to fight smart, to keep records, to stand firm. Some of them are still there, running the show now. As I sit here on my Meadowview porch, watching the cornfields shimmer in the sunset, I think about that notebook. It's up in my attic. Pages yellowed but legible. It wasn't just a tool against Vernon Slade. It was a vow to myself that I'd never let anyone make me feel less than I am. And I've kept that vow. If you're out there, facing your own Vernon Slade, grab a notebook. Write it all down. Fight clever. You're tougher than you know.